Hello and welcome to episode number 182, which is all about adaptogens with Lopa van der Mersch. We speak about what are adaptogens, how they help our bodies, what are some of the myths and whitewashing of adaptogens going on, and what wisdom is lost in our current quick fix hack culture. So please stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm your host Colette, and I hope to educate and empower you to take charge of your health and well-being, preventing disease in the body and mind so that you can thrive in life. I will be sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. I will also discuss topics like yoga, which is the sister science of Ayurveda, health and wellness, nutrition, fitness, and mindfulness practices, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to help you to connect to each other. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend that you start by listening to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Now, if you like the content, please subscribe to the show so the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. I've also set up a new private community away from social media on my new website, Elements Healing and Wellbeing. Now, this community provides a safe space for like-minded people to come together, to connect, to share, and to support each other. And I have many other perks in this community as well, so check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and just click on the community tab in the menu. I hope you can join us. I'm looking forward to a lot more in-depth connection and conversation over there. And now, here's the show. Hello and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. Today, I'm very happy to introduce you to Lopa van der Mersch, who is many things: an Ayurvedic practitioner, a mother of two, a sustainability advocate, a TEDx speaker, and recovering cult member. Her adventures have taken her around the world in search of health, spiritual fulfillment, and deep energy. 2 years ago, she added a new chapter to her life story. Founder and CEO of Rasa, the adaptogenic coffee alternatives revolutionizing people's relationship to their energy. Welcome to the podcast, Lopa. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Colette. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I haven't discussed really adaptogens on the podcast before. So I'd love to start this conversation, Lopa, with like an adaptogen 101, if we could, please.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So adaptogens are, as many people are probably familiar at this point, they're a class of herbs that at the most basic and indeed oversimplified level help your body to adapt to its environment. And most of us live in an environment of great stress, and they help us adapt to stress. On the plant consciousness wisdom level, you can look at it from the perspective of these are herbs that generally grow in very harsh, stressful environments, and they thrive there. So when we take their bodies, their wisdom into our own bodies, we're getting a little bit more of that. How do I thrive in a stressful context? And one of the things that's important to note, though, is that it's not a replacement for a healthy lifestyle. And what you're supposed to do when you take adaptogens is to use that little bit of extra buffer that you have to actually go in a little bit deeper and have a little bit of that broader perspective on how can I actually support my lifestyle better? How can I live a healthier life? What are the pieces that I'm missing to have a more sustainable lifestyle? It's not about, okay, cool, I can keep running myself ragged. On the scientific level, the way that they help you to adapt to stress. So your body has two main systems that it uses to communicate to your adrenals that you're under stress. That's your HPA axis, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the endocrine system's pathway for letting the adrenals know of a stress event, and then the sympathoadrenal system, or SAS, which is the nervous system pathway. Together, these are two of the most fundamental parts of your neuroendocrine system, which can be considered the master system, the primary system of the body. Because, you work with those two systems and everything else starts to work better. Of course, they're all connected. And so you impact one system and it's always going to impact another. But these are two, your neurotransmitters and your hormones are two fundamental ways that energy moves within the body. So those two systems are what alerts your adrenals, hey, we have a stress event, send us some cortisol, we're going to take care of it. And what adaptogens do is they actually work on those systems and they mimic stress. So often when I say that, or when we've used that, out online and stuff, people are like, I don't need anything to mimic stress. I have, thank you very much. But the way to look at this is they're actually a EU stressor. So they're a good stressor, like exercise. Right. Exercise is actually stressing your muscles. It's actually stretching your body. Like discipline, exercising discipline in your life is also is a good stress in your life as well. So these are actually strengthening, very similar to exercise, and mimicking stress in this kind of micro way that allows your body to, it's like lifting stress weights. And it's like, okay, I can actually handle a little bit more stress with a little bit more ease. And they work cumulatively as well. So over time, they actually have more and more of an impact on how well your body processes and adapts to stress. And fundamentally, they are helping to increase the amount of time it takes you to have a stress response, reduce the intensity of that stress response, and then reduce the amount of time that it takes for you to come back to a normal, balanced state. And so they're just helping to tighten up that stress curve a little bit so that it impacts us a little bit less. And there are some criteria for something being called an adaptogen. We call them the 4 Ns. They have to be non-toxic in normal therapeutic doses. So as with anything, the poison is the dose. If you go ahead and take like gallons and gallons, you're probably going to have an adverse reaction. But in normal therapeutic doses, it's going to be non-toxic. They need to have a non-specific effect on the body. So, and again, this kind of points back to that neuroendocrine system, these are systems that work with and influence every aspect, every system in the body. And so it's not like the same with some herbs where it's like, okay, this is really a liver herb, or this is an herb for blood. These work very holistically within the body. Okay. They need to have an overall normalizing effect. And that normalizing effect is that stress response and helping the system to regain homeostasis in stressful events of any type: physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual. And then lastly, there's that neuroendocrine impact. Our chief herbalist at Rasa actually coined it as neuroendocrine because it was the 3 Ns plus the HPA axis, which didn't quite have the to it. So we're like, okay, has the neuroendocrine system impact? So it has to meet all those 4 criteria in order to be considered an adaptogen.
Very good. Great explanation. Thank you so much for that. So thinking in Ayurveda terms, what are some common adaptogenic herbs used in Ayurveda?
Yeah, so Ayurveda actually has a host of them, unsurprisingly. And it's important to note, like there is a scientific criteria for what things, why things are considered adaptogens. And I have heard turmeric lately called an adaptogen in quite a few different studies, and it does not have those impacts. That does not take away from how amazing turmeric is. Right. But it is not an adaptogen. So in case you've heard that, Bacopa, Gotu-kola, Shatavari and ashwagandha are 2 of the most, common ones that everybody knows. Shilajit as well, are all adaptogenic herbs that are commonly used in Ayurveda. And as well, we have Shilajit, ashwagandha and Shatavari in many of our blends at Rasa as well.
Okay, great. And, there's many, like you just talked about, the misinformation or myths around adaptogens. You just talked about how turmeric was listed. You've seen it listed as an adaptogen, and that's, turmeric is amazing, but it's not adaptogen. Are there any other common myths that you'd like to dispel?
Yeah, I mean, one of them I touched on already, which is it's not something that you can use as an excuse to run yourself ragged
Right.
continuously. And they do have a little bit of that potential. And so this is where you have to apply wisdom, you have to apply discrimination. And I'm sure much of your audience, they're already practicing Ayurveda, like they understand that bodily wisdom. But there are many people out there who are like, great, cool. Now I can keep working my long hours. Now I can, keep not taking care of my body. I've seen someone use it as an excuse to party really hard, and they were like
Right.
doing all their drugs on the weekend, and then like they'd have their stack of adaptogens in the morning to get themselves through. And that's not what it's about. So it's the myth is that you can, and I think most people wouldn't admit that this is a myth that they have. It's a kind of semi-conscious one that's really embedded into our cultural milieu that we need to, just kind of go for productivity at all costs. And there's a real undermining of basic human needs for rest, for quiet, for silence, for inner connection. So adaptogens are not for that. And I believe that you can burn yourself out just as badly if you do these adaptogens in that way. It's just going to maybe take a little bit longer.
Right. Because if you're living a stressful lifestyle and then you're giving your body this little bit of, EU stress, it's all accumulative.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But if you use it and you get that little EU stress and then you come back and, it's like you get that little bit of buffer, and sometimes that might take a couple of months, because they work holistically in the body. And like, Ayurveda people are going to understand better than anyone. It's about what you do daily. It's about how you're incorporating these things into your lifestyle that you're going to see that major shift. And that is one of the reasons why at Rasa, we decided to kind of sneak it into the coffee ritual, because we're like, all right, this is a way that people actually drink it every day and take the herbs every day. But, and then, you start to get that little bit of like, oh, I'm not getting as stressed out about things, that like my kids were screaming and it didn't rev me up in the same way. And I'm a little bit more regulated. And it's like that's your cue to be like, okay, so, what can I change at the systemic level? What can I, what habits do I need to incorporate? What rituals in my day do I need to incorporate? How can I incorporate more pause and rest? I think that's, for the vast majority of people in today's culture, like that's one of the most important things that we need to be doing is incorporating more time for pause, more time for rest. So that's one of the myths.
I'm going to jump in here because as Lopa was saying there, adaptogens are not a replacement for a healthy lifestyle. And what you do day in, day out, our daily habits and rituals are really important to our health and well-being and to our longevity. If you're interested in getting support, I have a self-paced online 28-day daily habits for a holistic health course. Now in this course, you get access to short daily webinars to help you implement daily habits that are in tune with the circadian rhythms. And I explain to you all about the circadian rhythms and how to structure your day to flow with these energies rather than to go against them and suffer. I talk about the mental gunas or qualities of Raja, Sattva, and Tamas and how to promote more Sattva in your life. And I also talk about the 20 pairs of opposites, the healing principle in the Ayurveda. And this is where I want to encourage you and educate you on becoming your own healer. If you're interested in finding out more, please click on the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and just click on the programs tab. Okay, let's go back to my conversation with Lopa.
Another one is what we've dubbed adaptogen washing. And I mentioned this with turmeric. So there are many, adaptogens are trending. They are getting very popular. And as with so many things, people get really excited about them. And many companies out there, don't have a grounding in traditional wisdom, like may not have like an herbalist on staff, like we do, that kind of thing, that are really kind of tied to both the science and the tradition around things. And so it's like, oh, it's trendy. Like, yeah, this is an adaptogen. That's an adaptogen, right? This is a really amazing herb. Why wouldn't it be an adaptogen? They're not looking a little bit deeper at things. And so we see many, many, many herbs that are called adaptogens that actually aren't. And you might think that that's, like a rose by any other name is still smells as sweet, but and that's true. And these herbs are still amazing herbs. I'm not discounting the value of some of these herbs that get adaptogen washed. But on the other hand, like if I told you that something had CBD in it, for example, and so you have a certain expectation of the effect that it might have, and it didn't actually have CBD in it, then one, like you feel a little bit cheated on the first and foremost. And then two, it's also kind of distorting perception of, what effects this is going to have in our body, because people are like, taking turmeric and thinking it's going to have a stress reducing effect. And it may, because it works in other ways and it's an anti-inflammatory. And, I'm just using turmeric as an example. But generally where people are getting distorted because many companies are using adaptogen as a marketing term instead of as a scientific term. And this actually is a scientific term. The term was actually coined in the 1950s by Russian scientists who did thousands of studies. And they were looking for something at the time that would give, Russian athletes and these super soldiers that they had an edge without the crash. And then that's when they were like, oh, these particular herbs, Eleuthero was the first one that they discovered. And they did 3,000 studies on Eleuthero, and one of the most studied herbs at all time. And then their funding got cut off for that, which was unfortunate. But point is here, it actually is a scientific term. Now, that said, many of these herbs have been used for thousands of years in other contexts. And the understanding of their normalizing effect on the body may be well established in the tradition. But if we're using the term adaptogen, that actually is a scientific term. And so commonly we see, people call mushrooms. All mushrooms are like, oh yeah, they're all adaptogenic mushrooms, right? No, there's only two adaptogenic mushrooms, and that's cordyceps and reishi. And we look at some of the main science out there, the most recent science that's coming out to determine. And there are different kind of classes of adaptogens. There's the known absolute 100% adaptogens, and there's only 12 of those. Jutamunsi is another one that I meant to mention. That's in the 12. And then there's like probable adaptogens, which means that there's a good amount of science on it, and they're pretty sure that that's going in that direction and that they're going to be able to prove it, but it's still going to take a bit more time. And then there's possible adaptogens, which means the science is still a little bit early. But it's still, looking promising that it does have all those criteria to be qualified as an adaptogen. And for the sake of generosity towards, our fellow people in the industry and towards the, in a way, the herbs themselves, if something is a possible, probable, or primary adaptogen, we just call it an adaptogen for now. And then we stay up on the science to just make sure, like for a while, maca was a probable adaptogen, and then they have confirmed that it's almost certain like a primary adaptogen at this point. So, the science is still evolving on that, but we see chaga and lion's mane called adaptogens. Those are mushrooms. Goji. I've heard matcha called an adaptogen. Pearl powder, tokos, pine pollen, moringa, all amazing, amazing herbs and fantastic to work with, but not going to have that overall normalizing impact, that overall neuroendocrine stress response strengthening impact.
Wonderful. Great information. I didn't know that the term adaptogen was coined in the 1950s. That's really interesting. So it's been around a while. It's just that now it's become more trendy and a marketing ploy as well. And I'd like to talk a little bit about, I want to come back to the mushrooms, so I'm going to bookmark that. I made a note of that. But while we're on this kind of, trendy, kind of quick fix hack culture that we have going on, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that and the wisdom that's lost with this mindset of, I can go out of the weekend and take my adaptogen on Monday morning and I'm good to go. And just that mindset of looking for the quick fix and the hack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the most important wisdom is lost in there. I mean, like the most important, I would say, like our fundamental connection to our experience as a human, to our true nature, to the process that is happening through us as consciousness manifests into our particular locus gets compromised when we're looking for the quick fix, when we're looking for that hack. Don't even get me started on biohacking.
I know, I actually don't use that term. It's the first time I think I've used it on the podcast.
Yes. And it's very trendy right now. And again, because it's looking for that quick fix. And, there's many different ways that I could look at this, but fundamentally my current working hypothesis around this is that all of this kind of hack mentality is a way of us trying to compensate more and more for the levels of disconnect that we have with our essential nature, from the levels of disconnect that we have with nature itself, with our basic fundamental human experience and human goodness and that heart, that changeless heart that's in the core of all of us. And, that disconnect happens. You can look at it through the lens of colonialism. You can look at it through the lens of the Industrial Revolution. You can look at it through so many different ways. But, fundamentally, I think it's different adaptations that we're trying to put on top of something, but not actually going to the root cause, not actually just returning inward to ourselves and having that real fundamental intimacy with our own experience. And so we're kind of mediating our experience through technology, through one of the examples that I give sometimes, like the sleep rings, and the sleep, all the hacking around sleep stuff now. We know sleep is incredibly important. Absolutely. And I would say you can get the best sleep of your life by following Ayurvedic principles, having a really good routine. And sometimes, let's say you have, just using the sleep example, let's say you have a real sleep issue and you use one of these hacky things, an app or, one of these things to help you tune in a little bit more. So they can be a tool to help us get more intimate with something that we have lost intimacy with, which is like the quality of our sleep and what influences that. And so using it for a tool, as a tool for a period of time to help facilitate that connection back to our moment to moment energy state. Beautiful. I'm really in support of that. However, what I see more and more is, I just read some article. It was Orlando Bloom. They were talking about how incredibly out of touch he is. But he said, first thing in the morning, I wake up and I look at my aura ring to see if I've had a good night's sleep. No. You should feel if you had a good night's sleep. Right. You should know if you have a good sleep. Like right there, you have outsourced this internal intimacy, discrimination, wisdom that is inherent there to this piece of technology. Like you should be able to feel it yourself. And if it, again, if you use it as a tool to help re-facilitate that connection because you've lost it, great. But for a short period of time, maybe a month, maybe a couple of months, maybe even just a few weeks. My husband even noted at one point that alarm clocks in and of themselves, are a way that we have disconnected from the cycles of nature, disconnected from our natural circadian rhythms. I was like, I really want an alarm clock in the room. So, and I have kids. I want to wake up early to meditate and I want to wake up before them. And sometimes I'm a little tired. And the reality of my life right now is that I need an alarm clock. That's just kind of where I'm at. But ideal circumstance would be I wake up and I know based on what the light is outside, based on how I feel in my body, did I sleep well enough? Do I need more sleep? I might go ahead and get more sleep. Or, no, I slept great. It's just before dawn, or whatever time it is. And I'm ready to get out of bed. And that is an intimacy that we're losing as a culture that I think is, that intimacy with our own energy state and that intimacy with nature and how it impacts us is, I think, it is one of the primary sources of wisdom. And to me is one of the most fundamental blessings of being human and the fundamental experiences of being human. There's many different cultures that talk about to be human is to be a mediator between earth and sky, between heaven and earth, between the divine and the earthly. And when we outsource that to technology, we're outsourcing our own, some of the most precious human experience I think that we can possibly have. The Fitbits are another one, again, it can be helpful as a tool for a period of time. If you're still, if you've been sedentary and you're trying to figure out like, what is a good amount of movement in my body and that sort of thing, that can be good for a period of time. But I think fundamentally you should be able to feel, am I moving enough? Right. Am I, do I need to sweat more? Is this, and that is, again, this intimacy with our body and our experience that I feel Ayurveda just hands that to us and it's just like, here's all the ways that you can help to forge that connection more and more. And I think that in a way, this quick fix, this biohacking kind of stuff is like the polar opposite. It's the antithesis of that Ayurvedic cyclical, rhythmic, intimate wisdom that we have with our own experience.
Yeah, so true. I heard a funny interview recently of a doctor saying how with this new culture of Fitbits, that there's more people coming in to the emergency room thinking that they have heart issues because their heart rate is going up, but they've never noticed, seen the heart rate number on their Fit before, so that they're showing up in the emergency room thinking there's something wrong. Like you said, it's great to have that connection. And as a, former athlete, I used to have all that gear years ago, but then I let go of all of that. And I think that technology, while it creates awareness, but it also, like you said, outsources our own inner guidance and it creates a barrier. And, with Ayurveda, it's more about tuning inwards and feeling the qualities in your body and learning the subtle signals from your body as well. So yeah, a lot is lost with with this quick fix culture. But, if it's bringing more awareness to people, great. But hopefully then that curiosity will go deeper, right? And that they'll integrate it more into their lives. What I wanted to go back to, Lopa, was you mentioned adaptogenic mushrooms. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, there's a lot more about mushrooms now. There's a lot more trending about mushrooms. So I'd love for you to educate us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Mushrooms are phenomenal. I am very, I think there's a reason that these things trend, looking at the collective consciousness. And I'm going to kind of go a little bit of a roundabout way of answering this question, but bear with me, I'll get there. A good friend of mine did a long apprenticeship with an Ayurvedic doctor in India, and he came back. One of the things that really just stuck with me from his experience, he shared this story of the doctor told him, he was like, well, how do I know which herbs to prescribe? And there's so many different herbs. Where do I go with it? And he said, in reality, he was like, you're going to, be exposed to, and you're going to work with all the herbs, especially when you're starting out. You're going to start kind of, just finding your footing amongst the panoply of herbs that are available. And over the years, you'll start finding that you keep prescribing the same, 4 to 7 herbs, that they just kind of keep coming up. And he said that is because you have a certain karmic relationship with those herbs. And those herbs are coming to you. And not only that, but you're going to attract the people that need those herbs. And that those people are going to be coming to you that need those herbs. And so that's going to be kind of your way. And when I think about that on a broader scale, I think part of the reason that functional mushrooms and adaptogens are trending so much right now is because the people need them. This is the medicine for our time. Right. It's important medicine for our time. And so I think that that's one of the fundamental reasons that they are trending so much. And, reishi and cordyceps, this goes back a little bit to maybe one of the myths about adaptogens that I didn't mention, is many people just sort of think of they help you adapt to stress, and so every herb's kind of the same, right? Because they all have these fundamental 4 qualities. They all help you adapt to stress. And that's a strong oversimplification. And each one is going to have those qualities, but they all also have their own personality and their own impacts on the body. Cordyceps is very energizing. It's very strengthening. It's for stamina. It's a very powerful mushroom in that way. And reishi is much more about calming the shen, calming your spirit. And there's a little bit of a misconception around reishi. It's gotten popularized as a relaxing mushroom, but it's really more a bit broader than that. It relaxes you into yourself. It actually brings the qi of your body, looking at the Chinese medicine perspective, it actually brings the qi more into the heart center, which is the seat, the home of our spirit. And so that is very calming to most people in our culture who are, our spirits, like we're pulled in so many different directions, and we're, constantly kind of our consciousness gets very fragmented through the amount of input and the amount of stimulation that we're, trying to hold in our individual mandalas of our lives. So that returning the shen back into the heart, it can be very calming for people, but it can be also very clarifying, very energizing, very in a certain way, in that way of like, and this is, I think, an important distinction too. Like many people look at energy like kind of coffee, and it's like it's an on-off switch. Like there's like, I feel like a lot and it's great and I'm pretty hyped up and which is very vitiating, or I'm tired, and like it's this on off switch. But, the Ayurvedic perspective, if as you get more into energy and your own experience, and as you do meditative practices and really work with your energy more deeply, it's a spectrum. There's a whole wide range here. And, so when we talk about, reishi can be energizing, it's not a coffee kind of energy. It's not like I'm going to like go take over the world. But it's more of that, like that seat of power that comes from being home within yourself and feeling that your consciousness is rooted where it belongs in your body. And that, so many of us think of our, like the root of our consciousness is in our head, but it's actually in our heart. Cause that's where our eyes are, and we're very influenced by our eyes. So that's, cordyceps and reishi, a little bit about those. And then there are many other, there's lion's mane, which is, fantastic. It helps to increase circulation into the brain. So it has this cognitive, expansive capacity, very beautiful mushroom, not an adaptogen, but a fantastic mushroom nonetheless. Let's see, what else am I thinking about? Poria mushroom is one that's not very popular and is on the likely probable adaptogens list. So they're doing more and more research about that. And that's one that we wanted to start looking at a little bit more ourselves. Let's see. Chaga is another mushroom that's often labeled as an adaptogen, but it's actually not. This is a good one to have some earth connected nature wisdom, nature intimacy awareness around, because chaga is being over harvested. And as things become trendy, and this is one of the things to really look at too, is that, as things become trendy, often what happens is, chaga grows on birch trees. It grows basically on 1 in every 20,000 birch trees. It's a parasite that kills the birch tree. It's actually not even technically a mushroom. It is a polypore conch. But it looks mushroomy, and, it sort of fits within the paradigm. It's phenomenal for immunity, but, people are saying, and that more and more, that we should be thinking about it from the perspective of like, let's give it to the people who really, really need that, like cancer patients and, people who really need that medicine, at least in terms of wild crafted chaga. Now there is really phenomenal farmed chaga, and that's what we use in our products as well. Because we don't want to be contributing to long-term sustainability concerns. And then you also, you can look at bigger downstream consequences. So chaga grows in Siberia, and they're going deeper and deeper into the forest to be able to get the chaga, which is pushing more and more the animals out, including the Siberian tiger, which is endangered. So drinking your chaga latte in the morning may be contributing to the endangerment of Siberian tigers, and at least the habitat loss. And so, it's just important to remember, like, everything is interconnected, and, and where your herbs come from, how they're sourced, how they're grown, how the people are treated, when they're, all of that has an impact too. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that we get a product in a package, in a box, in a bag, whatever. And we don't think that, the way those people were treated also is part of the energy that goes into that herb. And plants are very receptive. They hold energy in a bigger way than an inanimate object might. So, ensuring that there is care and love and trust all across, all the people to the extent that's possible. In this world, we're very disconnected, and sometimes, not everything is possible. Like that herb might have been trucked over and packed onto a truck by someone who's really grumpy, like that.
Right.
Not necessarily have control over those things, but as much as possible, if there is, love and care and sustainability and long-term consideration for ecosystem health and human rights and ethics, that has an impact on what you're taking into your body and how it actually affects your consciousness.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you made that point, because exactly the whole chain that product was manufactured in, and from source to packaging, is really important. And we know that planetary health is as important as our own personal holistic health. And this is definitely something going forward we all need to be very aware of, and to be aware of the brands that we're spending our money with, and making sure that they have an eye on the environment as well in their processing. So thank you for mentioning that. And it's so true. A lot of these adaptogens, like when you were talking about, they grow in harsh environments, like shilajit. I know that grows way up in the mountains above a certain altitude. So it's quite hard to harvest, right? And to source. And so it's, we have to be aware that there's not an infinite supply of some of these adaptogens, correct?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there are, there's a lot of movement around sustainable wildcrafting and, ensuring minimal ecosystem impact. And so you can get sustainable sources of shilajit. You can get sustainable sources of most of these herbs. That said, rhodiola is a common adaptogen, and we've been watching sustainability concerns over the years. And our chief herbalist actually just approached me earlier this week about it, that we are going to switch to, we've been doing what we thought was sustainably wild harvested, and it was, and then it started to get less and less sustainable over the years. And so now we're switching to farmed rhodiola that comes from Canada. So, these dynamics are changing, and it's important, to the extent possible. I mean, that businesses care about this and make decisions with what they do, and that consumers are paying with their pocketbook as well. And, taking that little bit of extra time to research companies and how they're sourcing things, and, making their choices with companies that really are that are paving the way for the future, that I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just an interesting note on shilajit, because it's not actually an herb, it's a substance. It's like, I call it rock sweat, because that's kind of what it is.
Right. It's like tar. Yes.
Yes. It actually, this is an issue that we're also finding out just this last week, that it can't be considered certified organic. And so we're sitting in a kind of in a consideration around, like, should we keep shilajit in the product, and then we can't make it certified organic, even though everything else in our product is organic, right. Or do we remove it so that we can have that certified organic? And so that, there's just all these
interesting
herbs interfacing with regulatory, context, which is not, especially when you're like buying products and stuff like that. Like if you're out there wild harvesting your own, God bless you. Thank you for, your connection and the way that impacts yourself, your family, your community, everything. But, many companies, this traditional practice, this traditional wisdom is being also then modulated and controlled and regulated by these overarching governmental regulatory bodies. And that, lends a certain amount of limitations and a certain amount of structure and it can be challenging to maintain the that like source of inspiration and that wisdom of connection with like the actual plant medicine when you're dealing with like, well, like, did we make sure that we tested all the blah, 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 and this, and so it's just an interesting thing that we've been dealing with and experiencing. And we're very lucky. We have an herbalist who's very deeply connected and talks to the plants and also lives in spreadsheets. It's a nice combination.
It's an amazing combo.
Yes, we're very lucky to have him.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about your adaptogenic coffee alternatives.
Yeah, sure. So, the seed of inspiration for Rasa was Ayurveda, as is evidenced in the name. And I actually started Rasa after I had my first child. I had a very, very stressful year that year. And, it's interesting because over the years, even my like staunch Ayurveda friends, who had their own practices and all of that, they would kind of like whisper to me on the side, like, no, early motherhood is when you just drink coffee. It's okay. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to drink coffee. I'm a Vata Pitta person. Coffee has never been my friend. Right. So I was like, all right, I just need something to get me through. And so I tried it like 4 or 5 times, I was like, all right, I'll just do the coffee thing, and was like, oh my God, no, no, that is not happening in my body. And so at the time, there weren't many coffee alternatives available, or there weren't any that at least ticked all my boxes that I wanted. I wanted it to have an energizing impact. I wanted it to be nourishing and fundamentally like a regenerative energy in my body, not just this, Chinese medicine says that coffee borrows energy from tomorrow to fuel today. And I really resonate with that experience. And so I wanted it to have this regenerative, nourishing, repleting effect on my body. And didn't want it to have any grains. I was gluten-free and still am now. Didn't want any natural flavors or anything like that. There are a lot of coffee alternatives out there that had, hazelnut flavor and vanilla flavor and stuff like that. And that's never been my jam. And I was like, while we're at it, let's just put a bunch of health and, benefits in there. And then I started realizing like coffee is one of the few widely accepted bitter tastes in our culture. Yeah. Coffee and chocolate, really. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, we could hide a bunch of really crappy tasting herbs in that experience. And that's one of the things too with adaptogens. Many of them really do kind of taste like crap. And so I worked with an herbalist, and together we formulated Rasa, which does have a bunch of herbs that if you drank them on your own, you'd be like, ugh. Ayurveda people are more, I think, broad in their palates, but the general public would not. They'd want the pill instead. Yes. But that taste is also medicine too, and getting the whole herb experience. Again, it's like a little bit more intimacy with nature. It's a little bit more intimacy with the fact that these are plants, these are roots. And many of the herbs in Rasa are Rasayana herbs as well, longevity tonics. And so the name Rasa just felt like a way to honor the inspiration of Ayurveda that fundamentally was the core of inspiration for Rasa. So we have currently 8 different coffee alternative products. Each of them have a slightly different taste or impact. Some of them are very function focused. Some of them, they're all just herbs. And then sometimes we're using whole herbs, just whole herbs. We have our original blend is 12 herbs, 7 adaptogen. It's got chicory, dandelion, and burdock as well for that roasty taste. Okay. A little Ceylon cinnamon bark as well. We use the Ceylon because it's lower in coumarin, easier on the liver, a little bit less heating, but still adds some of that sweetness and that circulatory benefit to get the herbs into more of the benefit of the herbs into more of your body, circulated more into your body. We have a blend with cacao. We have a blend that's mixed with coffee, and this is a really good, like, quote unquote, gateway drug for people. Because the herbs really balance the impact of the coffee.
Right. Yes.
And I actually me drinking just a cup of coffee is still going to be really not a great thing, but I will have a cup of our dirty Rasa, as we call it. And, I might do that like once a week or something. And it's a much easier lift on the body. The herbs are very grounding and nourishing and balancing.
Less of a wired effect.
Exactly. And then we have some function focused blends. We have an immune one. We have one that's focused on mood and happiness. It's called our Super Happy Sunshine Tonic, with a beautiful, beautiful herb from South Africa that we get from a company that is partnered with the San tribe of South Africa. So this is a sacred herb for them, and it's all grown in partnership with them.
Fantastic.
And they get a revenue sharing, and it's a really beautiful, and it's a very, if you search this herb on the internet, you're going to get all this stuff that says like natural MDMA, and I would say like if you drink like 8 cups, you might have that kind of impact. But we went for a more, in general, we're going for like a more tonic dose, a more like from that Ayurvedic perspective. And I was speaking with our herbalist about this recently. He was like, we have a blend, for example, for libido. It's called Spicy Rose. It's really focusing on building up those stores of energy so that you're actually nourishing your shukra, as opposed to, he was like, I could do the thing of like pumping it full of some pretty intense aphrodisiacs. I could like throw in some horny goatweed and some, a lot stronger extracts and that sort of thing. And it would really have an impact on people, but it's not going to be that kind of like long-term, slow, sustainable change. That's what we're really trying to impart, as opposed to like, there are some things that we could do as herbalists that's a little bit manipulative, and a little bit like sneaky, like, okay, we'll just like, kind of jack you up, which is that same extractive mentality, that same quick fix mentality that, we were just talking about, like, is problematic. Like, no, that most of our blends are designed for this kind of like slower daily tonic experience in your body, and are designed to be safe for drinking every day for months or years if you want as well. And then we have 2 blends that have a high quantity of extracts, which are more impactful in terms of that kind of like, you're going to feel it right now experience, but then still have a lot more of that deeply nourishing, it's both the immediate impact as well as then the long-term impact. We're kind of balancing those out a little bit, but because they have extracts, they're also more expensive. The extracts are just generally very expensive to produce and source. Right. So that's a brief introduction to our line. We're very proud of what we've created. Our supply chain is absolutely beautiful, and something that we're also constantly working to improve as well in terms of both ethics and sustainability. Yeah,
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think that is as important, as the product itself. And I love that your company is very aware that looking towards the source of the herbs, and talk to us a little about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we hemmed and hawed about a bit was when we were first starting was, were we going to try and source the herbs locally to where we're producing, or are we going to source them in their native context? And geoauthenticity is an important principle in herbalism, where it's similar to like the concept of terroir in wine, where like the soils and the climate and the air and everything of that location has an impact on that herb. And so we opted to go for geoauthenticity, which means to source the plants where they are indigenously native to. So our Chinese herbs come from China, our Indian herbs come from India. And, it's very complex, and I can go into like any single herb, and, our herbalists could talk for hours about any single herb and any single relationship. But we source 48 different botanicals across our entire product line from 12 different countries. So it's very complex. And one of the things that we've really prioritized is just having relationships. Like, we have relationships with these people. If like we have them over for dinner, we have them over for tea. When it's safe to travel again, we'll be visiting these farms and these locations more. And just getting to know the people that we're working with, the people that are harvesting our herbs to the extent that we can. We don't want to always have, we're a small company still, so it's not like we have unlimited resources to just throw at this stuff. And it's really, really important to us. So we have, I think, in some ways, like people might look at it and be like, oh, you've kind of overspent on that. But, to us, it's really important. And that, we put our money where our mouth is on that. Our Indian herbs we get from a really beautiful supplier. Just very proud and impressed with what they've done. So in India, the quote unquote green revolution caused a lot of dependency on pesticides and chemical inputs in general. And so like these big agriculture companies would come in and give free chemical inputs. And then because you use the chemical inputs, then you need more of them. And like, cause it's not regenerative, it's not self-sustaining. And so then you get into this dependency loop with the company, with the big agriculture company. And the company that we're working with is, at a small farm scale cooperative level, is working to reverse that. Yeah. So they are providing organic inputs, which are way more expensive generally than chemical inputs. So they provide that for free. And then they've also been helping they work with 2,000 different small farmers. And they've been helping many of them transition over to organic, which is often a process of years. And like from a strictly profit perspective is not that sustainable from like seeing that whole process through until you can actually get organic certification and all that. But they've, just stayed the course and it's a family business that's been, around for, I think something like 60 or 70 years. And the son who has taken it over is just a really beautiful person, Surya. So we get our ashwagandha and shatavari from there. Our Chinese herbs, we get several different herbs from China, and again, family business. Some of them are sustainably wildcrafted in Chengbai, which is widely considered to be one of the best regions for growing herbs in China. And this is there's a common misconception, and some of it is factually based and understandable, but that like China is just one big polluted cesspool. And that's not entirely the case. And actually, China in recent years has been making some huge strides towards major sustainability initiatives countrywide. And there are still some incredibly pristine places, and the Chengbai area is just absolutely beautiful. If you want to just see like some amazing natural beauty, search Chengbai, Changbai. That is the largest nature preserve, and we get all of our herbs from either within that preserve in a sustainably controlled, wildcrafted way, or just outside of that preserve. So it's very pristine and beautiful.
Wonderful. I mean, I love that you're going the extra step. Definitely the market is driving that now for more sustainable products. But also that, you're making these connections with small farmers and supporting them. And I do think that connection is really important. Like we talked about the energy from the source to the product arriving on the shelf. So I appreciate all those extra steps. And I know the people, the consumers appreciate that as well, that you go make that extra effort, because it's not easy in a lot of cases, but it also, I think, ends up in a better product.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Going back to that, like how much love and care is put into that supply chain actually has an impact on, on what you're taking into your body and what you're using to influence and adjust and work with your state and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good for you for making the extra efforts and being very aware and conscious of not only people's health, but planetary health as well. So as we finish up here, Lopa, I'd love for you to tell people where they can go to find out more about you and Rasa.
Yeah, so we are at wearerasa.com, so WEARE Rasa.com. And we are also on Facebook and Instagram at We Are Rasa. And we do have an offer for listeners of the podcast here. Use Elements of Ayurveda discount code, and you'll get $5 off your order.
Ooh, very nice. Thank you very much for that. That's very kind of you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Lopa, for coming on, sharing all this amazing information. Like I said, I haven't really talked about adaptogens on the show before, so it was really interesting. And love the idea of this product, and that people can still have that, that coffee alternative, but with such healing for their body and mind.
Yeah. Thank you. It's an honor to be able to do it. And we see through our customer reviews and all of that it really is having an impact on people's lives and actually changing people's lives. So we're very grateful to be stewards of this medicine, and hope that it will inspire broader changes than just, something that you drink, but also in their lives and how they impact others as well.
Right. And that's the way forward in our world, right? That's the future is, we have the conscious consumer now, and more companies very conscious of how their effect on the planet and on people and so on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, for your work in the world, Lopa. And thank you for your time today. I truly appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Colette.
Take care of yourself.
You too.
Thanks. I hope that you enjoyed that episode with Lopa. Some really great information there. If you think that this episode will be helpful to family or friends, please share it with them. And don't forget to check out the link in the show notes for that very generous offer that Lopa gave, $5 off your purchase on wearerasa.com with the code Elements of Ayurveda. So check out that link in the show notes. And also, I mentioned earlier my Daily Habits for Holistic Health course. That link is in the show notes as well. You can also check out my online offerings, consultations, at-home cleanses in the show notes also, or just visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, please do so the new episodes will automatically download for you. And thank you so much for tuning in. Take good care of yourself, be well, and until next time, slán go fóill. Bye for now.